and that countries can actually be responsible for abusing human rights. So that's Nuremberg. I've set the scene and told you about the internationalness of Nuremberg and the categories of crimes that were being held. And if you think about, okay, well, once we have got to a point where we realize that something needs to be done to address the past, and we may need to hold people accountable, is that the format we want to go for? What's another possibility? Another possibility is based on the restorative justice model. And what's mentioned often is a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And the most famous example of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission is what happened in South Africa at the end of apartheid. So that was Nelson Mandela authorized it, after apartheid was dismantled, and the commission was chaired by the well-known Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And there have been other TRCs, other Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. There's been one in Canada around, I think, native residential schools. There's been one in the Congo and other African countries around ethnic conflicts and genocide. But the most famous, there was one in Germany too, to help with reunification after the Berlin Wall came down. But really, South Africa was most famous and created a model that others followed. The approach is to bring together the victim and the perpetrator, bring them together. Sometimes the wider community is also involved. It can be for an individual, a crime committed by an individual, so that's smaller scale. And I've spoken to lawyers on my podcast who specialize in restorative justice, and they have amazing stories about how that's done, like murder cases and so on, where the accused or the perpetrator is actually brought together with the family of the victim. Or it can be done on the systemic scale, which is what South Africa and the Congo and the other Truth and Reconciliation Commissions are about. The goal of restorative justice is so the victims can actively share what they've been through, and it gives them an active role, and it moves them out of victimhood. It moves them out of powerlessness. It's a discussion of who was harmed and how they were harmed. So there's this unveiling, exploration of the truth. That's the truth in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's for offenders to take responsibility for their actions. Now, this is going to be an important point that I'll come to later. Understand the harm that they've caused. Give them an opportunity to redeem themselves and make sure they don't do it again. Discourage them here, not by an external sentence, but here to make sure they don't do it again. And then also form an agreement or consensus as to what can be done by the offender, usually, to help to repair the damage. That's the restoration part. Okay, so how's it going to help here? In South Africa, to give a concrete example, the hearing started in 1996 and they went to 2003. The commission was finally disestablished in 2003, so it was a long time. Mainly held in public, though not all of them were. And in some cases, there was an amnesty granted to the perpetrators. Another important point I'll come back to. Victims were offered rehabilitation. They were offered a reparation. There was a register open to ordinary South Africans who could come in and express their regret, whoever they may be, for anything that they might have done. It was a way for people to come and say, I've been part of this, or I've contributed to this system. If I were to look at my part in what has happened to humanity, I would say I worked within the system. I thought money and prestige was the way to go. I was also responsible, and I actually might have helped companies that were involved in what today we recognize as gross violations. You might want to take as an example a pharmaceutical company that may not have been testing medicines or producing medicines that were really healing people. I've worked for such companies in the past. So that might be something that we want to do as well. There was 3 things that the TRC in South Africa did. there was a human rights violations committee that actually investigated the abuses that occurred over 30 plus years in South Africa. There was a committee that looked after the victims, so how to rehabilitate them and give them reparations. And there was this amnesty committee that looked at who deserved amnesty. And one other thing it did was it heard from everybody. So it didn't pick sides and say, so only this group of people have been victims of abuses. It even looked at people who might have been victims of the liberating forces, like the ANC or the African National Congress. So I was just trying to be as broad and ambit as possible, because this is about no longer doing things in secrecy and opening everything up to the light. So how would this play out? Okay. I don't know, obviously. I'm just one person, one lawyer, in fact, giving it my best guess and trying to give an informed idea. First thing is, all right, with all of these tribunals and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there's always this prior universal agreement that, my goodness, something really terrible has happened. There's been a gross violation of the international war crime. So, if you think about Nuremberg, it wasn't set up to prove that the Nazis had been evil. It did certainly expose how evil they had been, but it was set up to basically, because everyone had already agreed that terrible things had happened, it was set up to bring them to justice. We'd already, the world was learning about the gas chambers and so on. With apartheid, it happened after it was dismantled. So you think about where we are in our timeline now for how we're going to get past what's happened. We're still not quite at a stage, not at all at the stage of universally recognizing that humanity has been lied to, deceived, controlled, manipulated. We've had our gifts distorted so that we've created a world that is unfair, all of those things. We don't have universal recognition, and this. When you talk to the so-called people in your life who are so-called unawake, and you express what's happening, they have no idea, right? So there's still a recognition that has to happen, that we have an injustice, a massive centuries-long injustices that have happened, not just what's happened in the last few years or few decades. So that's coming, and it's happening, and my goodness, it's happening rapidly in just the events that are occurring right now. This is kind of in preparation for when there's a cascade of truths and people can't deny them anymore. Next, after there's another thing that needs to happen when we think about how we would set up the forum for dealing with the past. And that is that who would have the so-called right? And I know I'm talking about an old type concept of needing a legal right to do something. But I think it's still important that if we are trying to move forward and we're trying to obtain some sort of healing and or justice, that whoever is responsible for carrying it out has a legitimate right to do so. And this is where the lawyer in me comes out. That who would it be? Would it be the United Nations? Would it be the International Criminal Court? I mean, in Nuremberg, the Germans surrendered. So the deed of surrender was used as the basis, and the Allied forces claimed the right to set up the International Military Tribunal. South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission was set up, as I said, authorized by Mandela. But who would come in? We call them white hats, but who are they? So I think there's something else that needs to happen apart from this global recognition of the wrongs that have occurred. What happens is the governments in power need to be led by people who are prepared to work together and create, maybe it's going to be a UN Security Council resolution, in which case, well, then we need to look at the UN Security Council. Maybe it's going to be an international agreement, but the governments that come together, there's going to need to be a change there as well, in their outlook, and a preparedness to undergo such a massive, to create such a massive forum, to work with the framework, to work to create the framework. So there needs to be a cooperation. Whether we set up a brand new forum, whether we use the International Criminal Court, the problem with the International Criminal Court is right now it's only, there are about 40 something nations that have signed on to the treaty that supports it. You probably need something that's basically more like the UN in terms of participation. But I'm not trying to presuppose it. With enough will, and if there are proper changes in government, we will reach that. So then, restorative or retributive justice. Are we going to go Nuremberg, or are we going to go South Africa? I'm going to give you a lawyer's answer, which is kind of a balance between both. Why do I say this? Well, I'm really for truth and reconciliation. I'm really for the restorative justice model. The main thing we need is the truth. We need a universal recognition of what has happened. It's utterly important to hear some of the details of the depths that as a planet we sunk to, as hard as it's going to be. As I said, shine light on it. Nuremberg didn't happen in secret, neither did any of the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. Restorative justice is better at obtaining the truth than, this is where I'm leaning towards the Truth and Reconciliation Commission more broadly, with a retribution Nuremberg-style trial tacked onto it. I'll explain that in more detail. A restorative justice forum is going to be better to get at the truth. It's going to, for those perpetrators who are prepared to realize the consequences of their actions, it's going to make more, someone's saying we can do both. We absolutely can. It's going to be better to allow us to move on. And then it's going to be a test for all of us as well. Like, how prepared are we to see the big picture that I was talking about at the start? It's a test of our spiritual capacity. It's a test of our ability to extend compassion, to act with love, to extend forgiveness, to observe the golden rule, and to appreciate oneness. So we may need to understand, talking about the amnesty point, we may need to understand that there may have been people who engaged in actions that were gross violations of human rights, or engaged in crimes that may have been forced into them. They may have been conditioned into them. They may have been born into certain situations or families. They may have been blackmailed. They may have had a fear of harm to themselves or their families, or they may have been just straight up manipulated by money or promises of career promotions and so on. Like, there are going to be people who we may decide it's better to engage them in the truth or reconciliation process, engage them in discussions with the victims as well as the broader community, and grant them amnesty. If we take the Nuremberg example, there's what's called a superior orders defense, or the Nuremberg defense. There are many, many people who said they were just acting on orders. And, you have to take into account, when they were acting under orders, were they legally obliged to follow the order? Did they know it was unlawful? Did they know what they were actually engaged in? Did they have an option? And some people who would put up their hands for a Nuremberg-type defense may be people who want to grant amnesty to. I'm not saying either way, but I'm just asking us to enlarge our thinking to accept that. Like if you take the South African example, and I said that there were different arms of the commission. One arm was the amnesty arm. There's the arm that investigated abuses, the arm that looked after the victims, and the arm that considered amnesty. They didn't grant amnesty to everyone. In fact, out of, I think, I've got the numbers here somewhere, 7,000 amnesty applications, they only granted 849. So they didn't grant amnesty to everyone. And there may be people that we just are not going to benefit humanity or themselves by engaging in the truth or reconciliation process. And so is there still room for the retributive justice system? Yes, I think so. There will be those perpetrators who are not suitable or willing to work with the restorative model. And it wouldn't be positive for humanity. It wouldn't be positive for victims. So for those people, I would recommend a swift Nuremberg-style trial. And why Nuremberg? Going back to what I said earlier, Nuremberg was an international criminal law forum. Nuremberg really started this whole area of international criminal law by recognizing the crimes against peace, the war crimes, and the crimes against humanity, and set a precedent, right? International criminal law, however, is kind of a blunt tool. It's not like the criminal law systems of particular countries. Every country has a criminal law system, and our criminal law system, like if you take Australia, where I live and practice, it's a very, very finely designed, there are a lot of rules around it system. If you use international criminal law, a lot of the concepts are very general. They're not specific. So we normally punish crimes under international criminal law because the crimes are just so shocking that it's in the interests of the international community. The balance is weighed against doing it this way than against the individual perpetrator. So I would think that the very worst examples of crimes here, international criminal law is the way to go. You also will have people coming from different countries, citizens of different countries. So you wouldn't want to have to rely on so many different cases happening in individual countries. You also will need I want to bring up this element. You'll need to realize also that there may be elements in the Nuremberg style trial that is more about military law. And if you have an international agreement that those sorts of concepts can be introduced into a Nuremberg style trial, then there's a legitimate basis for it, even if you're trying people who aren't military people. So that, like Nuremberg, there were doctors on trial and there were lawyers on trial, but they were following the rules of a military tribunal. That's because there was an agreement that would happen. But you and I, unless there are military people in the audience, a civilian shouldn't be subject to military law. So what I'm saying is that with an international agreement, we can apply elements of military law to a Nuremberg-style trial and still try civilians. The other thing I want to point out about a Nuremberg-style trial for the very worst cases is, it's swift. We want to move on. The truth and reconciliation process might take longer, but I think when it comes to retribution, Nuremberg only really took a year. The first trial, which is the most important one, where the people like Hermann Göring, who was Hitler's deputy, were being tried. They were the heads, the real masterminds behind it. And it was set up in 1945. 1945, the war came to an end in Europe. The tribunal was set up in August 1945. October 1945, 2 months later, the first indictments were presented. And a year after that, October 1946, it announced its verdicts in a death sentence for 12 defendants, life imprisonment for 3 of them, long-term prison for others, and so on. So that's why I would say for that part, Nuremberg, yes, it is a useful precedent. But for the most part, where the focus of the world should be on, it is a restorative justice system, which is like truth and reconciliation. So that's been my presentation. I know it's a little bit different from what Steve thought it might be. I still have immense pleasure working with people who are trying to create a new legal system. But as I said, it's quite hard to talk about what that new legal system will look like, because we have loads of different ideas coming from not just lawyers, but many people who are very interested in creating a system that is fairer. So I thought this topic might be of interest to people as we get to the very pointy end of the long, epic saga that this planet has been through. So I don't know if I finished kind of early, if there are any kind of questions or comments.
Let's see. How you doing? Oh, there they are.
Yeah, look, I've got a couple, and I want to start by congratulating your dog pacification non-verbal arrangement there. You did very well. Multitasking, actually talking to us at the same time, non-verbally communicating with another animal. That shows a real skill. So congratulations for that. There was one thing you said, Geraldine, that really resonated with me, and I wanted to talk about that one a bit more. You were talking about restorative justice, and there was you hinted at something, and I'm pretty sure you even know about this. It's an original form of justice called circle sentencing, and I'm pretty sure, I thought you did know about that. And it struck me, I remember when I was teaching legal studies in Moree over 25 years ago, and we were studying that. I gave that because I had a lot of original kids in my class, so we had to go that way anyway, and I was happy to do it.
Most of them, I think.
Yeah. And what I found interesting is this. They were using it, and we were watching film of what took place, and what you said was exactly what happened, where the aggrieved parties really got a chance to say what they wanted to say publicly, and I don't think people understand how important that is. And secondly, what was very powerful was the elders were sitting in that circle, and then you'd have this other original person, it was always original, who was the perpetrator. And the results were stunning. But you know what? That was 25 years ago, and I know it's still used sometimes occasionally, and it's accepted in some courts in Northern Territory. But do you see that as a way in the future where the people who create the deed and the people that was created upon all get a chance to look at one another? Do you think that would have a long-term better effect on the system we have at the moment?
Oh yeah, Steve. Thank you for bringing that up. Restorative justice in this country, in Australia, has a very strong connection with. And now I'm going to test my dog whispering skills again. It has a very strong connection with Indigenous ways of doing things. So let's see where it is. So it's accepted by some courts that there's an almost alternative justice method, which is go the community method, and so it's not like the perpetrator escapes justice under our laws. It may be agreed with the state that they have both the justice served to them, whether it's a prison sentence or fine or community service, as well as what the community or the circle decides that they they should be served. It always works in, because of the system we're in, it's, we have governments and we have law enforcement. Restorative justice, as it is now, when it comes to individual crimes committed by individuals, always works in with the court system. It's kind of on top of, you'll get a reduced sentence, perhaps, in our, for want of a better word, in the formal system, because you have accepted that you will also serve justice under the informal system. And that is growing in acceptance. It's because it's got such good results.
Yes.
There's still a lot of resistance. I actually, the example I like to quote is, I interviewed a lady who does this in Florida. She's a lawyer in Florida. She's an expert in restorative justice, and she quoted the case of a young man who murdered his fiancée, and the families came together. They were good friends. The two sets of parents were actually good friends. They were all in the same community. And the parents came together and they said, we don't want your son, and the parents of the girl who died said, we don't want your son to get the death penalty. So they came together and they worked out that if he was prepared to do certain things, like commit to education, there was violence in that relationship, commit to educating young people about what dating violence can look like. He would not escape the death penalty, and he would get eventually he would get a shorter sentence. And he's done everything that's been asked of him. He cooperated, and I think it's about 15 years later, he's now in a light security correctional center, and he'll be out soon. And it's worked for everyone. There's been forgiveness. Very hard, like imagine the tests that those parents were put through. But the lesson that it's had for everybody is amazing.
Well, see, what I found interesting, because I watched film of this, was I was watching some original people who had a strong contact with their culture. Not all original people do. And it was the elders who passed judgment. And I was told later, and they made the point that sometimes their judgment was harsher than the courts. So it's really not a get out of jail thing, but what it's really about is, to an extent, being shamed by the elders and losing their respect, and how much that hurt them. But then it dawned on me, the drawback with this system is one thing, and it gets back to something you said before, that we're all part of the source, and we've consented to come down this time to do certain things, right? Now, that to me is the missing part of the equation in the legal system, because if you're dealing with someone who doesn't believe that and doesn't have that connection to an understanding why they're here, or a connection to their elders, then circle sentencing doesn't work as well, because you're not bound to the community. It struck me, the stronger you are bound to the community, the stronger the impact circle sentencing had on the person, and the chance that person will then improve themselves. So I'm suspecting that in the future, when we have smaller communities and people are more aware of their reason for being here and more connected to their community, I'm wondering if that might then become the major form to deal with one type of crime. It doesn't deal with, say, theft and stuff like that and sort of corporate thought, but for the crimes that offend the community. And I'll give you a great example. In original society, if a man raped a woman, when they were judged, they would be judged for raping all of the women in the tribe. Now, when you have that thinking going on, I think circle sentencing, which what the original people did, would fit perfectly. What's your take on that?
Yes, I agree. I mean, one of the things with this model is that it works best, when you've got a couple of things happening. One is that the perpetrator, wants to continue to be part of the community, right? So they want to. Exile is a punishment in itself. And so this is why when I was talking about system-wide applying it system-wide, it's not going to work for people who don't see themselves as one of us. It's not going to work for people who think that they have rights to do what they did, and don't have any intention of rejoining the human community. The other thing is, it's connected to that. Exile is a punishment itself. It's the willingness to the room for empathy that the perpetrator has. I mean, like, some people are not able to, it's not going to work for a psychopath or a sociopath. They've got to hear the victim, and they've got to go, oh my goodness, it's that oneness thing. It's, I am you, you are me, I put you through this. If you don't have those things, then restorative justice does have that's where its limitations come.
I think you're right. And it's interesting you mentioned something that dawned on me. When you're living in a society, and I'll go back to Olway in Australia before Cook, the worst punishment that could be given was not death, it was banishment.
Yeah.
They would prefer to be speared through the leg or die on land, because they had this belief that if I am banished from my land and I don't die on my land, when I die, my soul is in limbo forever, and that would be dreadful. I can't live with that. Please kill me. Now, when you have a society like that, then circle punishment works particularly well. But if you have a society where I got out, I'm free, and I got away with it, I'm fantastic, I'm happy. And a lot of people would think that. That's the problem with this. But I'm thinking, pre the change that we believe is coming, where to be banished from your society, from your people, from the people you grew up with, the ones you worked with and helped you, would be the worst punishment there is. So I suppose it does come down to the fact, in a perfect or near perfect society, circle punishment would work brilliantly. But in a society we have right now today, we have so many other people who are disconnected from everything, and it doesn't work as well. And in the time we've got left, there was one other question I did want to ask you. And it was something you said way in the start, where you've said you've met many well-funded individuals who have prospered in the system they have now. And this is interesting, because for them, I give them an extra tick. They've done well in the system, and you're saying they think the system should change. And I find that quite fascinating, because they're the ones who've benefited out of it. They're the minority. Is there a shared belief amongst these people you've met as to why they feel the system has failed?
Yes, it has to do. The impact of the higher consciousness shift that we're going through is amazing. How it touches people. It has to do with they either realize the impact it's having on the environment, or they realize the inequality that it's creating socially. I know one person who did quite well in a traditional career, who shifted gears and retired from his job in finance to become the CFO of a not-for-profit, because his school-age daughter, told him, that she was worried that the world was in tatters. The conversation about climate change has a lot to do with this, yes, but it's also this growing recognition among young people that we need to change, so that the younger generation is impacting the older generation. There's the levels of compassion and empathy are just growing. And these are people, like I was the same. I just thought it was the way to behave. I just thought it was go to school, get a degree, go to work, climb the ladder. I wouldn't classify myself as malicious, right? But I was in the system, and there are a lot of people who are just like that. Until then the shift happened for me, and it's like this micro shift, but it's like the whole universe changed, and you start to realize that it's the oneness point, that what I do to other people, I do to myself effectively, and that shift is occurring. It's occurring at the highest level. So people are beginning to feel, and COVID has something to do with this also. People are beginning to feel what's it all about? Is it worth climbing the ladder, not seeing my family, affecting my health? Is it worth it? At the same time, I'm actually not helping the planet. So all of these things have come together to create the perfect storm for many people, as well as they've done. It's not like they want to walk out of the house and say, I don't want my 5-bedroom mansion anymore. But they're starting to think, how can I actually be more effective, impactful?
So you feel like that they're actually sensing this actual change within the planet itself. That's become part of it.
Totally. I see it all the time, Steve. I see it all the time. I was working with a big bank, and I was invited to talk about purpose of the bank, and I just gave a very straightforward presentation. I didn't go full woo-woo, but I said, we're at the cusp of a massive change, and this is the transformation of our time, and we're going to change what companies are about. Companies are going to become purposeful, and this was at a relatively high level in the bank. And I had people email me and say, I want to talk about this with you. I don't really want to do this role in credit assurance or whatever part of the bank they were in. I want to help with making the world a better place.
Wow, that's interesting. So that would mean in the future, this is the last, I suppose we should close with this, in the future when this new legal system comes together, it would sound to me that you've got crimes against different things at the moment, crimes against humanity. It may well be in the future there's going to be a new precept which is called crimes against Gaia, the planet itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, someone mentioned climate change, and I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that I'm not making a judgment about climate change either way. All I'm saying is that the emphasis on climate change has created in people who are not questioning the narrative of whether climate change is real or not. It's created this awareness, right, that the planet is being impacted. So climate change is one of those things that is such a divisive thing, but it's kind of having if you say climate change is being manipulated as a tool to manipulate the masses, it's kind of having a boomerang effect, where it's coming back again, and it's actually creating in people this feeling of
really important, because what it's doing, and I say the same things to people that say it's fake. I said, I don't care. I said, I see people marching down the street saying, I care about the planet. It's a no-lose situation, that one. And I say to other people, oh, no, it doesn't make any difference. I'm saying, well, look, if we stop polluting, why is it a bad thing? Because there's more than one piece of damage on this planet. It's not just the fact that the Earth is getting warmer. There's a lot of other things that are going wrong through pollution. And I just see it the same way. It is waking people up. And if people want to march and say, I care about nature, but they may have got the specifics wrong, but they're still saying, I care about nature. Why would I want to stop them doing that?
Yeah, because what it awakens in them is so powerful. You can't stop that.
Yeah, it awakens a contact with the planet, with the spirits, and with the mother, which is the creator. And all Indigenous people refer to the earth as the mother. They never call it the father. So this is important. I just look at the details. I don't care whether the earth is flat or round. It means nothing to me either way. And the same with this one. As long as people say, I'm honouring the planet, how does it matter which team you belong to, whether you're a Catholic, Protestant? It makes no difference. So I agree. So that's what our future should be. And I love that. I really thought that was a great talk about the earth, and the fact that you focused in on the Nuremberg trial, where they invented a new form of law. Yeah. And it wasn't it was just like, this is common sense. And they introduced a new thing called crimes against humanity. They were nearly there. All that's needed now after the change is introduced crimes against Gaia, or in fact they call it Pachamama in South America. And I think there's one country in South America that does that.
Yeah. Ecuador or somewhere.
That's right. Yeah, they've already done it. They're ahead of us. Yeah. They're the first one the first cab off the rank.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's about your 15 minutes. I tried to keep that in the 15.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Geraldine. As you know, we think you're doing a wonderful job, and you're in a tricky area there, but it's great to hear that even in that area, there's change. They can sense it. They don't know where it's coming from, but it is around. And we're lucky.
Yes.
We were there when it started.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Steve and Evan.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to see you again.
See ya.
Thank you, Geraldine. Oh, too slow. Day late and a dollar short.
Yep, you were shoved right off the cliff on that one, bud.
Yeah, right.
See you
Wow.
later.
That was quite something. I'm so happy I got to hear that. That was one of the presentations that I was eagerly waiting for.
Yeah.
I wanna understand how my grandkids are going to be operating on this planet. It's kind of weird because like last year, my emphasis on the next generation was there, but it wasn't like as strong as until like October when my granddaughter was born. And since then, that's been like really my forward uh, thinking process as to like what Lola is going to be
Yes.
doing, like 50 years from now, 60 years from now, when I'm going to be like long gone, and what is the world she's going to be in, and what we're molding here and laying down the footwork and the pathwork for them is to go into that different timeline, Steve, that we've been working towards, and what all the Aboriginal cultures have been warning us about. I feel that this event is like the event of purification.
That's what the hobby call it, don't they? They call it the three brothers, the two blue brothers, and then the other one, the eye of purification.
Yeah, that's what this event is. It's the purification event, and what do you think? I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Like, what do you take away from what Geraldine was saying? What are you envisioning in your mind where you are at in Australia? Like, how does that work out?
Well, for me, when she started talking about the restorative justice, I just kept thinking back to teaching my kids when I was in high school there about circle sentencing. It was exactly the same thing. And it dawned on me, it hadn't dawned on me until then, that's the way once this change is upon us, and the people that have got no love for anyone won't be here anymore, then that form of system then becomes the major form of system where the person is the perpetrator and the person who was perpetrated upon look at each other in the eyes and they talk to each other like humans again and connect with one another. It dawned on me that what she was talking about, and we did have an example of it. It was the Nuremberg trials. So, it sort of made me realize that there is a way to do this on every level, political, economic, and also legal, when this change comes about, because I sort of didn't think much about that until I listened to Geraldine. So, no, for me, I think it's a great idea. Bring it on.
I like it. Steve. Sorry, I'm just connecting with Evan and everyone here. Rob, you want to jump on and interact with Steve, please?
I'm here. I was listening to it, and the law side of it is definitely something that we're not very versed on, right? And to figure out how to get there's a lot of terminology we can't use here, but to hold the people responsible for the ones that are basically taking the world hostage on so many different levels. And we need to figure out ways. And this is something that I've been actively working on as well on Clubhouse to essentially, find lawyers that are going to hold the torch and put the fire under these people's asses to make sure that they get what's coming to them. I mean, there's been a very big wrong on this planet, and we need to correct that path on so many different levels.
And I think that's why Geraldine spoke about what happened in South Africa and what happened in Germany, where we can see there were horrific wrongs perpetrated on humanity, and they came up with a system. And it was interesting because in both those systems, some people were forgiven, particularly in South Africa. A lot of people were forgiven who did wrong things. But if it was done, like I was talking before in that circle sentencing thing, where the people who met each other and faced each other, yeah, but then we're talking about people. The ones we're talking about responsible for this, they were the ones we agreed in circle sentencing that didn't work for. So therefore, in that case, yes, there has to be a line drawn in the sand. And I'm hoping, Rob, that that the earth itself will deal with those people by basically just saying you're no longer welcome here. You can now leave. Your vibration is so low, and I'm now vibrating at a level that is 300-fold above what you're capable of. Off you go, and you leave here. And that to me is that would be the best judgment and the best punishment, because there's no agony involved in this, and justice is complete because you've now failed, you lost your tenure to stay on this planet. And I'm hoping that's what's going to take place. But if it doesn't, then when the change does take place, then we're going to have something like the Nuremberg trials again, where the people who've done this, that have manipulated and lied and deceived and done horrible things, knowing what they've done has harmed and killed millions, they have to be held to account. So one way or the other, if the planet doesn't do it, then we're going to have to do what happened after the Second World War and what happened in South Africa. We have to call to account the people who've done this, because they know what they're doing. They know. And they have no conscience. And the same way Goering and others had no conscience, no love, nothing, just driven by pure hatred and vengeance. Well, those sort of people we don't need. These ones are driven by a different set of morals, which I think are worse. Strangely enough, it's very hard to say that they could be worse than what the Nazis were, but I think some
agree.
people are actually worse, because those people might have been committed to an ideal. These guys are just committed to themselves and greed and money and a complete lack of compassion for anybody. I mean, Hitler loved his mother, and I think he loved his dogs, and maybe Eva Braun. That may have been the sum total of it. But right. I swear, some of the people we're dealing with now that have created this love nobody whatsoever. They don't even know what that emotion is. So yeah, something has to be done.
Well, that's exactly right, and I feel something has to be done, because if we let this transgress and people aren't held accountable, then it's open season for all. If, let's say, something doesn't happen, right, then it's open season for everybody else to do it again and again and again. It's going to become this cyclistic type of endurement that mankind is going to have to face until one of those times it becomes irrefutable or irreversible, and then we will be no more, right? I mean, really, that's what it comes down to.
Well, you've got to plan both ways here. I'm very pragmatic about this. What the change we talk about could happen, and we hope it does. But if it doesn't, then we have to create it. And we have to create it, and it's got to be done in a way. Somehow or other, mate, the problem is that at the moment, the majority of people have been dragged down in their development, and we need people to be aware. That's what's missing at the moment. An awareness of why we're here, what our purpose is, and what is right and wrong. That's gone. But you're right. Somewhere along the line, we're going to have to do something. And if it's not done by the planet, then it's up to us. And obviously, it's been done in the past. It was done after the Second World War. It was done in South Africa. And it's been done in other places. I think it was done once in Africa. I think that was crimes against humanity there, that one. But yeah, it can be done. But let's just hope, like Geraldine was saying, that within the upper levels, there are a lot of people who are now sensing the fact that this is wrong. And maybe they'll be part of our change. I don't know. But at the moment, yeah, we've got to keep both doors covered.
Well, another thing that you said that I loved was that we need to get back to that indigenous, well, she started it, but you kind of said it as well, back to that indigenous way of living where we're more symbiotic with the planet as opposed to being adversarial with it. We have to really go ahead and try and figure out a way to sustain ourselves in a way that becomes that we become one and harmonious with this celestial body that's giving us everything that we need. I mean, we know that if we're talking about climate change, there is another agenda that these people are using behind that to create this this I guess this revenue stream. But really what we're looking at is the more spiritual side of it, and the fact that if we lose that part of earth, we end up losing a part of ourselves. And that's what people are not really there is like this awareness, but it's an awareness in a different way than just climate change as they would label it.
Yeah, it is different to that. I think it's a lot different. I think it's actually welling within a lot of people who don't know about Uluru, they don't know any of this sort of stuff. A lot of people are saying, I see it written all the time, I feel like there's a change around. And I think one of the things that we got to learn in this change is, I can't remember the exact quote, I think it's a Cherokee quote about why they live. The way they live today is so they can give the best to their grandchildren. That every decision they made should be made accounted for their grandchildren. What will their grandchildren live in? How will they live in this world that they're given? And we've got to make sure that this world is brilliant for our grandchildren. And that's the way we're supposed to live, but we don't. We don't live like that at all. We live in we have a different mindset at the moment. And as you know, I mean, at the moment, the mindset is being so cultured. It's so difficult to break through. But having said that, you hear all these different people saying, I can feel something within me. And maybe a lot of people now under this current system are starting to change slowly to begin with, but they're starting to change, and that may take it. I mean, I was around, unlike yourself, Rob and Omar, I was around in the 60s when there was a palpable change and everyone thought the world was going to change so much better. It was going to be heaven on earth, and it all fell apart and the whole thing was destroyed. But there was a period of 4 or 5 years where everyone was thinking, all young people were thinking roughly the same way, that this is all wrong. This has all got to change. And then it was hijacked, and we know that disappeared. But the point to remember is that this change in everything in the late 60s and early 70s came out of a period where everyone's mind was controlled. People don't get that. In the late 50s and the early 60s, man, we were walking around marching to the same song, all of us. Everyone did the same thing. Women's place was at home. Their job was to serve the husband when he came home, put on his slippers, and everyone fell around there. The father never really did anything with the kids. We all went out and had beers. Everything was done the same way. And we were all regimented. And out of that regimentation, something welled up within, where people said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I feel like, if anything, this is what's happening now. And this is not a thing. It wasn't relying on a ceremony that took place or a Hopi prophecy. In the 60s, none of these words were spoken about. It just happened. And everyone started to talk about love and peace, and then people made fun of it and then hijacked the whole story and tried to make money out of it. They stole Woodstock and they turned that into something else. I think I've heard many times that counterculture died when the people with money watched 1 million people go to Woodstock and said there's a market there. And then they hijacked the market. That seems to be a commonality I've heard from many people. But before that, everyone was talking about good things, about going out and hugging trees and doing things that we all make fun of now and making fun of hippies and stuff like that. But it was there. Then it disappeared. I suspect it's coming back either way. That's my hope, because I don't have any other one, to be honest.
I agree. I actually live about 2 hours from Woodstock. So yeah. we know there is a history that was this jam band session that people really, they were disgusting to the place that they were at, and it didn't become this movement as they thought it would be. It was about who's, on what drug and who's making money, and it was a disgusting display in a lot of different ways. I will definitely give that. And then, living here, the people who lived in that town were absolutely just they hated Woodstock. They really, and then it was glorified, so they had to put a plaque up to it because people were coming as for tourism because it was Woodstock. Now, one thing Paul
Yes.
Wallace said here is yes, the Navajo think in terms of living with 7 generation hence in view. I think that that is something that we need to get back to. We are we are these creatures now that are so balled up into this societal construct that we don't even know what's we're not worried about 4 hours from now. It's that instant gratification right this moment.
It's
So I
now.
really, yeah, exactly. And even the consciousness people are I want to say we fall into that category too because we keep making this example of living in the now. Well, yes, some of us are in the now, yes, but we're still using the now to implement things for the future, which is that full and complete circle of when we're talking about it. So,
Mm.
there is a system to it, I guess you could say.
There is a system to it, and the thing I'm seeing now is that in the late 60s, it started with so much promise to change everything and then fell apart. We can't make the same mistake again this time round. I think the difference is now that the people who created and changed and made money out of it and then changed everything again, those people now, we know them. We didn't know them in the 60s. We really didn't know anything. We just knew about where we lived and what was happening there, and the music was good and the drugs were interesting and all that sort of stuff was around, and it was all a big experiment. But we didn't know that everything was being run by a few people and the whole world was being manipulated. And what this was a temporary blimp, and they got on top of it and destroyed it for a while. But I believe it's coming out again. And I believe this time round, they can't destroy it because I believe their time is up. And if it isn't up, we have to make sure it is. And we have to actually really very soon from now run another Nuremberg trial. If it doesn't work through the planet, then we've got to do something quickly because we are running out of time.
Let me ask you this, Steve, since I have you here too, and I think this is a crazy question, but do you think that it's more is it more of a pure movement then? And I don't want to say pure. It was more infantile in its stages back then. But now that this tremendous deception has happened on such a global level, this movement is now in its I don't want to say finale stages of because we are right before that precipice, right? So it is kind of like the ending stage before that switch or that tilt, that complete tilt of no return, I guess we could say.
I think you're right. I think that the first time this happened, and the very first time it happened was in the like 65 through to about 72. That's as long as it lasted, about 7 years at most. And I think that it was all with the greatest intentions. And I mean, I lived in a place called Nimbin, which is the corollary in Australia to Woodstock. That's where all the hippies went and lived, and they still do to this day. And I think it was naive. I think that there was an innocence in there, but it was a naive innocence that could be manipulated. Because the hippies up there thought that what we're going to do this. And by the way, Nimbin is the third most popular town in New South Wales for tourism, just like Woodstock, okay? And the buses come every day to look at the hippies. So that sort of thing happens too. But what I think happened was they just thought by doing this, the whole world would say, oh, shit, this is much better than what we're going to do. We'll do the same thing. And that never happened. It never happened because it was naive in relation to that they didn't really understand that when John F. Kennedy was shot, it wasn't one man shooting a bullet that spreads in 7 different directions. It was a complete created thing by people far more powerful than John F. Kennedy that were running the world. And they watched this the same way when they lost the war in Vietnam. They realized then, my God, we don't fully own the media. We'll make sure from now on we do, and we'll make sure that all our coverage is done properly. We were in that time before they even grabbed the media. Remember that. We're in a time where hippie stuff was in the paper all the time. They wrote about it in different ways. All that sort of stuff was okay then, because even though the cabal was there, They weren't overt then. They were just hiding in the background, just making lots of money. That's all they wanted at that stage. And that's why at that particular stage, it was okay to be naive, because we didn't really know. I was part of that. I was there doing all that sort of stuff. I went up to Nimbin for a while. I was fully part of it. But we didn't realize what was really going on. We didn't know then. But I think the difference is now that we hear about Geraldine saying that bankers are saying this is wrong. And they know. They know who runs the banks. They know who these people are. It's not a secret anymore. It was then. So, yes, I think the same sort of change is afoot, but there's a difference now. It's not a naive change. It's more aware of what is the other side. At the other side, it was just maybe a president or a country. But no, they're nothing. They're just midstream. Even people like Gates are midstream. The ones you've got to be fearful of are people whose names we don't know. They're the ones who run the show. I mean, the ones we talk about, they're in the cabal, but I can tell you now, they're not in the elite. They're not in the clique in the middle there. They've been running this place for thousands of years, for a long time.
They're more like administrators.
Yes, they are, but they're nameless administrators. And what the administrator says, it's a bit like the Queen. If you watch shows about that, they're there to tell her what to do. And when she's told what to do, she knows she does it.
That's right. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah,
I would say they may not even be corporeal. There's some entity that is running from even further out than we can think of. That probably governs those people as well.
That's definitely right, mate. So it really is. The difference is now that all of us that know that now, none of us knew it then. So we didn't know what our enemy was. And there's an old saying, know thy enemy. Well, in the 60s, they didn't think there was one. They just thought that everyone would join in with peace and love and some good drugs and a lot of bad drugs and some bloody good music that came out at that time, undeniably so. And it was a period of change and excitement, and people adopted that and just thought this will go on forever. Everyone's going to come to see us, but no. No, it didn't. There was a war taking place, and the cabal were now sharpening their claws, and the damage went everywhere after that. Everyone got attacked. And it's interesting that straight after all this wonderful music, the music that came out next was disco and punk. And it was some of what I consider the worst music that's ever come out, sort of come out straight away. And then after that, they started packaging the music, and it was done through MTV, and it was all done. And then the music became quite mindless to an extent because they took over everything. They took over art. They took over music and tried to bring it down to a worse level than has ever been before. And that was part of an ongoing thing that took place from that place on. And to an extent, maybe the hippie movement was responsible for bringing out the worst in the other side. But maybe in the long term, now that we can see it, it makes it this time around when we know our enemy, we've got a better chance of defeating us, whereas before they didn't. So I think it's the same movement. I feel like it's the same thing where people say, I don't trust you. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the people in control. I don't think they care anymore. And we were talking about pollution then, but it's much worse now. It's much worse. In the 60s, you can look at the pollution levels compared to today. It's appalling now. So, yeah, now we can see it. We know who we're fighting against, and we know what we're fighting for now. So maybe this time it'll work. And if it doesn't work this time, it's done. We lost.
You're pretty much screwed then, hey, Steve?
Yeah.
This is the last-ditch effort, right? Where the hope you say, let go of the edge and go for the middle of the river and keep your head above water and just go for it.
Yep. That's
right?
what the hope
we can't drown this time.
No, we can't.
Keep my internet on today. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're having issues, guys. We're supposed to have Valerie Burrow. But,
I was wondering about that. I was going to ask her. I thought I was doing an intro for her, but it sounds like I'm not at the moment.
Yeah, she's having issues with the internet and connecting to StreamYard, and she's tried Chrome and Safari and a bunch of other ones, and Evan's just given it one last shot to see if it works. But if
I wonder where he left me, because he left me on my own. I wonder what he was doing, but I could hear him talking.
Earlier on, Steve, two things like that really resonated with me was one, that when you said that back in the old day, if a man raped a woman, then he would be tried for raping all the women in the village, and if he stole from one person, then he stole from all of them. I resonate with that, and I think that's something that we should establish now. And if we did try to establish something like that now, how do you think we would go about doing it? Because of the size of our cities and towns, like, I could see being manageable if you're in a community of like a couple hundred people, right? But if you're living in a city like, let's say, Tokyo, the biggest city, population-wise on the planet, has like 40 million people living there, 35 million people. How would you like address that if you were to go into that type of justice system?
Well, there'd be two parts to that. And the first part is this: I need to explain what happened old way when you when you raped a woman. I need to explain. There's a beautiful show called Women of the Sun. It was made by original people that I used when I was teaching in the high schools. And the next part of the punishment's the interesting part, and it'll explain how we do it. So the woman comes up, and in this particular show, it was a white man that was part of the tribe, and he raped her, and he came up and explained what happened. And what they then did was they brought everyone to sit in a circle, right? There's that circle sentencing taking place again. And there was no trial. This is where it gets interesting. There wasn't a trial where, the defense team came up and explained this woman was being provocative and all this sort of stuff, and she deserved it and all that business, and let's go into your sexual history. None of that happened. It went straight from being charged to being placed in the center of the circle. Now, that involves one thing. That means that nobody in the tribe will lie. That's rule number one. If you want to create a community, no matter how big or small it is, if there's no trust, you'll never create it. So the woman never lied. Now, why didn't she lie? Because she knew that the spirits were watching everything that was said and done. And that's what this comes down to. They believed, original people believed, and I was asked this once when I was doing talks before everyone got locked down. I was asked, did all original people believe in a God? And the answer was instantaneous, yes. Oh, there's a clip, Women of the Sun. Evans put it up, or someone's put it up. It's the first show there. It's called Alinta. Yeah, yes. Now, the reason is they believe that the gods watch them all the time, and to lie is a mortal sin. It's no different to lie because it creates mistrust, which harms the tribe. Therefore, it's regarded at the same level. And if you were caught lying, you'd be spared for that. You may not die, but you'd be spared. And if you did it a couple of times, they would kill you. So the first rule is, for a tribe to exist, everyone must be truthful. Now, they've got to understand why they're being truthful. And this comes to the punishment. What would then happen is that warrior that raped, was a guy at this time, a white guy, would stand in the middle, and every man stood up and said the same thing: you raped my wife. And they would get angry, and they would pick up their spears. And here's the punishment. Every man would throw their spear at that person. Now, if he managed to dodge all of the spears, it would be cited then that the woman has lied and the spirits have stepped in. You've got to remember, all of these men, what do they do for a living each day? They throw spears. Otherwise, they don't eat. So I can tell you, all these guys are pretty damn good at throwing spears, and you, the person who's raped, is allowed to hold one shield, which will be broken with the first spear anyway, and they always die. Now, what's interesting in that is that all the way along, that punishment is reliant upon the spirits being involved, A, in making sure before the trial took place that the woman didn't lie, because she didn't, and B, the punishment that took place would be under the auspices of the spirits again. So it comes down to this. For a tribe to work under circle sentencing, I said before that you've got to be connected to the tribe. You've got to believe in the tribe, and you've got to understand the tribe looks after you. So you have to create a society where people understand, and this is the trick, why we are incarnate, and understands that if everything that you do that is harmful to another person, you will also suffer, then for God's sake, why would you do it? Why would you lie about something when the spirits can hear it straight away and you're going to get it punished later? So what happens is you have a mode of behavior and morals that's based around the realization that every step you take, a bit like Sting's song, although he was singing about a stalker, every step you take is watched and valued and evaluated. Therefore, whether the tribe, now when it's a tribe of say 40 million people like it is in Tokyo, they will have precincts. And I know America has that too. And in New York, you've got Bronx and Manhattan and places like that. People say, I come from that tribe. And that's actually what they're saying. Indirectly, they're not saying I come from the tribe of New York. They're nominating an area, and it may be a suburb. Now, yeah, the numbers are larger, but if you have the right underlying modality and the underlying philosophy of I'm part, and this is a great line that comes from the Standing Stone side, that the soul is the breath of God, that my soul is the breath of God, then every other person that's next to me comes from the same breath. So therefore, we're all related, which is what Geraldine was talking about earlier. They're all part of the same source. Once you have those two understandings, then that tribe can break into precincts and it will work. But while you lack those understandings, you can't have a tribe. And circle sentencing won't work. And Valerie is not going to be with us.
No, we tried all sorts of internet browsers, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. Nothing would work.
And I'm going to say on Valerie's behalf, I want to make the point too.
I do have a little bit that she sent me.
Okay.
I'll get that up.
All right. I just want to make the point that being computers, I understand why she got bamboozled by it. But if you've got, what have you got there?
We do have a presentation from her, so maybe we can try another day when the connection might be better. Because yesterday we did have like a lot of solar activity, and Rob's been having issues with internet all day, and myself here as well. We got knocked off.
That was wild. They literally just cut the stream. Like in StreamYard, there's a 2-click process to end the broadcast, and we just shut down. Oh, the whole thing just shut down.
Just like that.
Wild.
If the whole thing was going, I was sitting there listening to Geraldine and looked up and nothing was green. I was like, whoa, what's going on? And and I had to say, Geraldine, stop. And so it's been an issue all day. So if we can reschedule Valerie, that would be
that's just Valerie's notes, Evan. That's her notes for what she was going to say, which looks quite interesting, to be honest.
It really does, actually.
I'm having a look at it and I'm thinking, gee, that looks pretty good. It's a bit of a shame but remember, we're in Australia and it's worse here than anywhere else.
Plus, I'm Windows and she was using Mac, so there's only so much I can do to help someone on a Mac.
Yeah, look.
No offense to people that use Mac. So
it just could be good because actually my introduction was about the fact that I don't actually believe in channelers from the beginning, because we do science, as you know, we're very focused on science. And I said from the very beginning when we went down this path, the one group we will never touch are channelers. All I got to do is go twice and then speak in a different voice and I'll claim I'm channeling. Really, that's the way I looked at it. But then I'm going to say something about this woman, that when I met her, I got to know her as a person. And I realized that she would never lie. And I found out from that. And then I read one of the books she wrote and I thought, shit, this is really good stuff. And I realized then that actually it is legit, but people misuse it. And she's one of the ones that is legitimate. She is actually a channeler, but unfortunately, that's my introduction. And after that, all we've got is pictures of what she was going to talk about. And I mean, she was part of the ceremony. She was there at Uluru, And then she was in our circle, wasn't she,
Mm-hmm.
when we did that? So she was part of this in a big way, but it's a shame. But there's the picture of it. But yeah, we can't get her this time around. But as you said, maybe we can get her later when things work.
Yeah, exactly. We've got time. It's
Yeah.
I'm sure over the next couple of days we can find time and space to bring her in and
Absolutely.
and really get this download. I like love Valerie and would just love to hear this, and it's the information that we need, right?
Yeah.
I'm not I'm in the same boat as you, Steve. To me it's I don't know what it is. Like before, I used to think it's malarkey, but now,
No.
more and more and more, I connect with people and I listen and I understand, not with my ears, but energetically. I'm beginning to, think differently about it because there are some people who can do this and some who think they're
Well,
doing it.
there are. I've met two now, and that means if there's two, there's more. I was very careful of it because all the other stuff, there's ways you can empirically measure. Even with certain dowsing rods and crystals, you can use things like blindfold people, and I've done that to Evan, where I've blindfolded him and then held something, and other ones pushed them, and it's worked. There's ways you can do this with different stuff, and I remember I've done that with rods and different stuff on occasions where I've got different people to independently do readings on something when they didn't hear the other person do it. But when it comes to channeling, there's no way to measure it. And therefore, I really did keep away from it because I kept thinking I can't empirically measure some way of checking what they did against other people to see if it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Leah, I mean, she's a channel from Off-World with Mesref. And what I did for a long time, man, I just kept asking her questions she couldn't answer. And she kept giving me the answer. I thought, you didn't know this. You couldn't know it. No. Then I asked her a question that nobody, not even my wife, knew the answer to. And then she gave it to me. I said, okay, now you win. I can do that. Well, Valerie, it's different. I just met the woman. I just thought to myself, this woman would cut her tongue out before she told a lie.
Mm-hmm.
She just wouldn't mislead people. And I came to the realization she was legitimate because of her as a person. With Leah, I got to test her out. I did it a completely different way where I could satisfy my rational mind by asking questions you don't know the answer to. And if you keep giving me the answer, well, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you are channeling. So, yeah, I'm behind it now, but I'm reluctant. I got there in two steps. Firstly, with Valerie, and secondly, with Leah. And I know you've got Leah on later anyway. Hopefully. We don't know for sure, but hopefully that'll happen.
She's in America, so connection might work.
Well, this is Australia. Remember that. We are the testing place.
She's in the USA.
She's in the USA. That's right. Should work.
It's a better chance you'll get it.
You're a good chance she's in the United States right now.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Well, it's different.
So tell me about this, guys. I'm interested in knowing this, and I'd like the audience to participate in this because we have a chapter 18 coming up with Forgotten Origin and our alien ancestry, and the first 50 people who sign up at our alienancestry.net chapter 18 will receive a 10% discount by entering the code children2. And it's all going to be uppercase like that. Children2.
Yep. And then the first 50 people will get 10% off. So that's just for the viewers today and the next few days. So it's especially for the viewers here. Yeah, so glad to do that.
And those we've done, is it 17 or 18 of them?
This is the 18th.
18th, yeah. You might think, what are we doing? 18 presentations, but there were about 7 that were leading up to the prophecy that took place at Uluru. And the next 11 relate to primarily, we know that the prophecy worked, and we're going to actually present that in a couple of days. We thought we'd just do that because all of the speakers that we've presented, most of the ones that you're using here, have been on ours, and they've all been speaking on behalf of that change. So the last 11 ones we've done are people like Geraldine. where we talk about, okay, when this change happens, if it does happen, I mean, we can't guarantee it, but we've got a lot of proof that says it is happening. But if it does happen, we've looked at how this place would look like in the future, because it's got to be a lot different to what we've got. So, yeah, because of the fact we've got people at the moment that are on chasing this up, we figure, well, it's a tidy mix. And if you do believe, and we can convince you when we do our presentation, that what happened at Uluru, we have plenty of empirical, very hard to challenge evidence that proves that that rock did ignite. And the magic box that the elders called it, which was actually the name of the actual rock itself, Uluru, did explode at 7:36. And ever since then, the Schumann resonance has been ramping up continually as the Earth is now in a period of change. And what we found out, ladies and gentlemen, is that there was a period, we always knew that from the time that ceremony started, there was a period for people to get on side and follow what the Hopi speak about, what the Cherokee, what the original people and all the indigenous people speak about, the change and what you have to do to be part of it. We now know there's a cutoff point, a time where if you don't make a decision, it doesn't matter. And that's why on the 20th of December, the 21st of December this year, when the third ceremony takes place, we won't be doing any more of this particular type of presentation where we bring in other people to talk about different aspects of the change, because it's over. It doesn't matter. So that's part of what that whole presentation we're doing, all the different chapters lead up to, I don't know, we'll do about 7 more, wouldn't we? 8 more?
Yeah.
And we'll lead up to the last one, which will be in December. And after that, it just doesn't matter anymore. That's the final line in the sand. And this is what all the indigenous people of the planet spoke about. But actually, when I say that, if you go to the Bible, they speak of 1,000 years of a change. In fact, all text, all religious texts talk about a change that will take place. But the beauty of this change is because of what happened at Uluru, the change will be graceful, it will be elegant, and it won't be bloody, and it won't be violent. But the lead up will be all of the above. That's the drawback of this. I wish it would be a nice, peaceful, calm situation where we all just go down and sit around and hug trees and sit down by the creek and just think, oh, what another wonderful day, a few more to come, and then everything, nirvana is here. No, it's the opposite. So, yeah, that's we're just hoping that people will join us and become part and find out what is actually taking place and how we can prepare ourselves. And the time that we've got left is time that you, as an individual, once you believe in this change, can go and see others. That's the major reason we're doing this. We're trying to get people to go out and explain to people, and if need be, tell them to go to the website and look at all the evidence we have, which is empirical evidence that will calm their rational mind so their spiritual mind can take over. Because this is what this is all about. This is about a time when the magic of this planet reigns, and if you're not part of the magic, you'll be kindly asked to vacate premises.
If you ain't vibrating, you're out of here.
Sorry?
Right? I said if you're not vibrating at a particular distortion, you're gone skis, right? You're out of here. Bye-bye now.
If you read Corinthians, you'll find in Corinthians, they speak about this. I know the Hopis say this, that the people who aren't supposed to be here, they'll be like smoke. You'll look there, and when you look away, the smoke will be gone, which gives the indication that this change is going to be rapid. But Corinthians said the same thing. That I'm sure everyone knows the line, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. What people don't know is the line that comes before it. When it talks about the ones who had it before, and they say, you shall look upon them, then look away, and when you look back, they will disappear. So if you read between the lines, because nobody knows, us included, nobody knows if this change that happened at Uluru, nobody knows what the process is past the change. I wasn't sure whether everyone that's here stays and when they die, they don't come back next time. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. But it seems to me, from what I've been told and what we're reading, it's going to be rapid. And it also was made very clear to me there was a cutoff point where if you can't see it, like what I see at the moment is you've got two choices. You've got the choice that's been offered to us at the moment, which is fear. Fear of the air we breathe, fear of the people that are called human beings. We don't want to touch them. We don't want to kiss them. We don't want to shake hands with them. We don't want to breathe their air. We don't want them near us because they might kill us. Fear of the Russians or the Chinese or some other thing that might wander around, a new strand of something that might kill us. It seems to me fear of losing your job, fear of another lockdown. It seems to me that all we have at the moment is fear. And what we've been taught day after day is not to get close to other human beings, which is against our nature. If that is one future, that's one road. The Mayans speak of two roads. That's one road that's on offer. And that's what you're going to get. It's not going to change. It'll be more of the same, but worse. Or the second one, when the Hopi talk about jumping into the fast-flowing river, that the hour has come, and celebrate with those who are in the river. And don't worry about where it's going to take you. It's going somewhere. And if you can't swim like me, well, put on a life jacket and don't jump in.
Alrighty then.
The whole business, whatever. I mean, where we are in Blissmore, this area, we just had the worst floods ever in the history of Australia, from what we found out. And we're all getting used to it now. But that's the point. This other way we go is the way that the Hopi, the Inuit, the Cherokee, the Navajo, the original people, all of the indigenous people of the world said would come, that the time would come when this would happen. And the people off-world call it the great event. And that's actually what they call it. And that's why they came here. It shouldn't be a matter of are aliens here. The question should be, why did they spend so much time and energy with a group of squabbling apes that spend nearly all their time trying to kill each other? Why would they bother?
Right.
They bothered for this moment. So that's what this is all about.
Bunch of knuckle draggers.
Basically, yes. I mean,
over paper.
I taught in high school, and what I taught was warfare and conflict. And occasionally I would teach them about some person, be it Galileo or Da Vinci, that was ahead of their times, or Tesla. And all of these people reviled another one, Socrates. They killed him. I mean, all these people that did something worthwhile, the one thing they shared was at that time, the people they were with hated them and wanted to kill them. I've taught them that history, and it's an appalling history, the last 6,000 years. It's the worst of the worst history we've ever had. It's come to a close.
It's supposed to show that we're like in the last foot of the Kali Yuga, or like the Dark Ages, and now we've just finally started to come out of it, and it's lasted 6,000 years. So
it has. It's been a time when we made so many mistakes. Number one, we started to compete against the mother. We farmed in bad ways. You can farm in good ways and bad ways, and we chose the worst. We then did another fatal mistake that no original person would do. We stopped listening to women. Right? You listen to the great Greek story where the women decided the men weren't going to war and they were withholding their conjugal rights, and the men said, I'm not going to war anymore. In original society, the women always had the last say. I remember there are many stories, you can read them in all the history books, where the men, the white colonialists, would go up to the original men and have a deal and make a deal and say, we're going to do this. And they'd say, yes, we agree to it. And then they'd say, as they finish, now we'll go and ask the women. And the men would be stunned. Why are you asking the women? And the men would come back and say, oh, by the way, all bets are off. The women didn't agree. The men just could not understand this. And that is why for hundreds of thousands of years, the original people lived with each other, and they never conquered someone else's territory. They never actually attacked another place. They never took it off them. They lived for hundreds of thousands of years on their tribal estate and never stole another tribal estate. Why did that happen? Because the women were running the show. Well, 6,000 years ago, we stopped asking women for advice. And the last 6,000 years have been an appalling effort because we didn't ask the earth, we didn't respect the earth, and we didn't respect the feminine. You must have warfare. We created that situation. And of course, we had off-worlders that were encouraging that as well, and on-worlders who were encouraging it also. Well, that's come to a close now. That's what the Hopi and what all the indigenous people are saying, and that's what that ceremony was about. And now that's why Geraldine said that all these businessmen can sense something within them, because the planet is now giving messages. It's raising itself, and it's trying to raise the vibration of every being here. Some will actually do it. And the point is, you've got to remember, the ones who don't do it, it's not a punishment. It's not a damning indictment on your soul. It's none of those things. It's a bit like this. 20%, maybe 15% will evolve. Well, what about the person who was next in line? The next person on the list that missed out by one. Does that mean they're evil? No, it doesn't. It means they'll go to another planet, incarnate on that planet where the vibration is much lower, where they can exist in that situation, and then come back here. But this planet is going to become one of the most sacred objects in the cosmos. And the animals, all the amazing animals we have, are welcome to stay. All of them, every one of them. But there's one animal that is not welcome. One animal has to earn a rite of passage, and that's the humans. Because we're the only animal that's fought against nature for so long. And nature is basically, the mother has said, okay, I'm healing myself within because we did it. There are over 15 million people involved in that ceremony. And of course, well, you guys were fully involved in that and helped spread it. That saved the planet. Not so much the animals, they were going to be fine anyway, but it gave humans the opportunity now to stay. Because if that ceremony hadn't worked, humans were going to be wiped out, the whole thing. But the problem would have been a lot of animals would have suffered too in the conflagration that was going to happen. Now this is all a beautiful setup where each person now becomes Peter at the gates. No one else. Yourself will judge yourself now. It's up to you. And you can't turn around now and say, oh, shit, I didn't know. No, you chose not to know. You knew about this information. You said, oh, that's all a load of woo-woo stuff. I'm not going to listen to that. You made that decision, but it was there for you. Now, the reason why it's now and not before, because before it wasn't there for people. They didn't know of an alternative. And therefore, how could they be judged? The difference is now, because of the one benefit of the internet, everybody now gets to hear all the information and they pick what they want. Yeah. So now it's right for humans to be judged.
This brings up a really interesting thought in my head, Steve. You just mentioned that if you're like one level down or just one out of the line, that maybe you'll reincarnate on another planet that is that's synced to your own vibration. Now, what I'm interested in trying to understand is, do the animals that inhabit this world, regardless of what they are, land, sea, and air, right? Do you think that they're a higher form of consciousness that's experiencing this earth? So if we're not vibrating at a lower distortion, or let's say if we're vibrating at a lower distortion and incarnate onto another world, now do you think we would incarnate as like something similar to like this type of human, or do you think we would incarnate as something else, or like an animal? Because a lot of people think that animals have a lower form of consciousness than humans do. So what do you think? Like, personally, I feel that animals have a higher form of consciousness. Once we've gone through this cycle of incarnate, learn, die kind of thing, and then once all that education is done, then we can come back here and be somebody's cat, right? Or come back here and be somebody's bird, and then we can really truly enjoy the fruits of Mother Earth.
That's what Mesrev said. When I asked him a question very similar to that, he said, As humans, we've incarnated as trees, as animals, as the rock. We've been in different forms of life all the way through. All forms of life are different, but none is better than the other. That's what's really important in this. And you've got to remember that when we rate animals, and we rate animals according to how well they can read, of course. And of course, all the other animals can't read, so we must be smarter than them. We rank them according to our expectation of what intelligence is. But if you look at our form of intelligence, we foul our own nest. We're not that smart anyway. And the great majority of people, when a car breaks down, we look at the car and say, what the shit's going on? I'll find someone who can do it. We don't know shit about that. What we don't understand is that I think that we can incarnate into many different life forms. And like Mesrev said, there are so many different forms of life that humans don't even know about. And we can be incarnate on an etheric world and this world again. I would think personally that person is 1% off. With the animals, they stay because they didn't break the cardinal law when we came down here. We had to honor what we lived in. It was a bit like this. Every animal knows not to foul its nest. I mean, that's just one of the common things you know.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't get that right, I don't care how many books you've read, you don't deserve to stay. That's what this was always about. And when you lived the life of, look, when I was a kid, if someone was dumb, you were called bird brain. Now they call crows feathered apes. So that now becomes a compliment. But we were calling all animals, and then we said that goldfish only have a memory of 5 seconds. They've now trained goldfish to drive vehicles.
Yeah.
So when we start assessing the intelligence of animals, and then people start to treat dogs and cats like humans. Why? Because they are behaving like humans and they have the same awareness as humans. In fact, dogs, it's now been proved, are the only animals on the planet, including humans, that look at both eyes at the same time and can read our emotions better than we can. When it comes to emotions and learning about love, dogs can give unconditional love, humans can't. So if we're going to measure things on love, we're not the smartest animal anymore. So when we start to look back and look at animals and from a totality, we start to realize that there is no difference in our intelligence. And can I remind you of one thing? Yes, we have a larger brain, 1300 cc, but we only use 15% of it, guys, which means, and think of this, the weight of our brain to our body is 1.9. A crow's, it's 2.9, which means basically that a crow's body weight to its brain is 50% greater than us, which means going on that alone, the smartest animal on this planet is not a human, but a crow. But we can't measure because crows keep it themselves so much and they've got such a complex language because we live near them, we hear them. I don't think we fully understand how stupid we are and how smart the other animals are. Really, seriously, it comes down to that. Yes, I know, occasionally you get a freak, you get a Da Vinci or a Tesla. It comes out where what's actually happening, Einstein, and I'm referring more to his wife than him, by the way, what's actually happening, those people are using 30% of their brain as opposed to 15. And we look upon them as some sort of godlike intellectual gift to humanity because it's using a bit more of its brain. But I did ask Mesrev, what would happen if we used 100% of our brain? He said we would kill ourselves because we couldn't cope with it. But we have the potential to do that. Now, if we used 100% of our brain, then yes, we might be able to talk about the fact that we can place ourselves above the other animals. But I'm saying to you now, I don't believe we can place ourselves above any animal, certainly not the trees. Oh, for God's sake, they're far more advanced than we are. And you've got to remember, according to the aliens we're in contact with, trees are rare. Very few planets carry trees. We are one of the few that do that, and we do it for a reason. They are the spiritual planets. We have no idea of what the trees do to our planet. We know what we do, but I would suggest that this is going to become a magical university where humans will learn exactly why it was that aliens from all over the cosmos came here. There was a time when humans were advanced, when Nostradamus and Merlin were Barry and Colin down the street. Everybody was doing that stuff. You've got to remember when I've told this story many times, when Carno disappeared in front of myself and Graham Hancock and 12 other people.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. What I can do, every human on this planet can do, only I know how to and you don't. It's that simple. There's nothing special about me except I can see the curtain and you can't. This is why this place existed. And what they've done to us is we have 7 senses and they've dumbed down 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the senses that make us special. Remember, we were never the smartest hominid on this planet. Of the 17th, we'd ranked 6th. We ranked 6th, but we were the magicians. And that is our greatest skill, and that's what will come back. Now, people who don't believe in magic, well, where's the point them staying here? If they don't even believe in it, then they're not really welcome.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we came to this planet to learn 2 things. The 2 powers that this planet has is love and magic. If you embrace love, you get 49%, but you've got to get over 50% to stay.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't embrace the magic, you still get 49%. So you know many people that really have embraced the love part but don't get what the planet's here for and the magic part. You've got 9 months to convince them that there's 2 parts to this story and they've got to embrace the second part.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what all of the people that are on this show, that are listening to this show, this is what I want them to try and do. To understand that you have a responsibility. The time is running short. The clock is ticking. To go and find those you love and then try and do what the original people called seed dreaming. Now, seed dreaming is a very clever way of farming. You throw the seed out once. You never come back and nag and repeat and repeat. You throw it out once and walk away. You let the seed take its own path. It might decide it's fallen on a rock and it won't germinate. Then fine. That's the choice of the rock, who is the person. It might sit in the soil for 5 months and then something happens down the line where they see this and say, this is wrong. What I was told before, I'm going to try it.
Mm-hmm.
You leave it. You do that. And that's what people have got to do over the next 9 months is we've got to go out and see dream people and tell them, no, don't embrace the fear of people and the air and the sun and the terrorists and the Chinese and the Russians and everything that you're scared of. Do not be scared of anything, because if you're fearful, you're on the wrong road.
Yeah.
You'll drown in the fast-flowing river and you'll walk up the wrong path with the Mayans. And the Mayans have warned us about this. There's 2 to 1. And once fear's involved, and that's why they're doing this, the Cabal know about the change.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing what Hitler did. I'm glad that Geraldine spoke about that. Remember when Hitler did when he knew he was going to lose? When he left the country, he blew it up. He destroyed it. He made the population fearful. He left it with a calling card. Well, they're doing the same thing here. They're trying to make everyone fearful so they don't walk the road and so they fall down together, because here's the beauty of this. It doesn't matter whether you're Hitler. You can't destroy a soul. And those that adopt the other way know this, that there is no place. The only hell you're ever going to find is the one that's inside you. That's where hell resides. There's no place for it. It's you. When you meet hell, like in the show Lucifer, when Lucifer said in that show, hell are doors that are always open, but the people don't know they're open. He made this point. He said that every door in hell is open. You walk into that door yourself. Lucifer never made you do anything. You did what you wanted to do. Well, that's what this is all about now. This is all about each person gets a choice. And yes, for a lot of people, some of your family are going to choose badly. That's the truth of it. I remember when I did a conference at Uluru, somebody got up and said, some of my family, I love them. I want them to be part of this, but they think I'm stupid and they won't do anything. I said, what can I do to change them? And I started by giving him the answer he didn't want. I said, nothing. You can't make people now drink water if they don't want to.
That's
What
right.
you can do is offer them the water, show them where it is, then walk away and let them make the decision. But if you stand there and nag them, you'll get the wrong result. You can't do it anymore. This is each person now has got to make their own decision, and then the rest, it's their call. But don't grieve for them if they don't come to this earth for a while. Remember, you've been here forever. Just like the rocks, you've been here forever. It's just a second or two. It might take a couple of incarnations elsewhere and they may come back. They may be close. So it's not like a permanent separation. It's just a temporary cessation of duties.
Awesome, Steve. Let's address this one question and then we'll wrap it up for the evening.
Okay,
Here
mate.
is the question from Brown Dot Flop. She's saying, I was so curious about that. If trees, plants, animals typically reincarnate along the same line, or if trees can be humans and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And wouldn't it be fantastic to see a massive redwood that watches thousands of years of history?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be stunning? And knowing around you at the moment that all the baby trees, when they're born, do you know, and I think you do know this, that the roots of other trees send them extra nutrients to look after, breastfeed them the same way our mothers do.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful life to do that? And wouldn't I like to be a bird, maybe a parrot for 80 years, just flying wherever I wanted to go, not having
you just stole the parrot right out of my head. As soon as you said that.
I want to be a porpoise because I can't swim, but man, I'd love to surf the waves. When you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, there's so many opportunities out there because every one of us has a totem. Every human being has a totem. I've got the goanna and the magpie. And my magpies, so they've done. I've had about 3 major events with magpies that just break every law of science. Would I like to be a magpie? Dead set I would. In fact, if you were going to list right now all the choices we had of all the animals you could be, if you wanted to be and you knew you had all your choices, humans wouldn't be high on the list right now.
No, I don't think so.
What do I go for first? For me, it's a fantastic story about choices that makes life so interesting because you can look at it from so many different points of view that it makes the whole of this web that's been created such a fascinating gift for us. But at the moment, we don't understand that. And if we did understand that, then that circle sentencing would work perfectly. Because remember, the worst punishment you could ever had once you understood that would be just thrown out of your tribe. Why would you want to do that? Because life would be brilliant. So, yeah, I can assure you, that questioner, that yes, I want to be a tree. I want to be a bird. I want to be a porpoise. I want to be all these things in the future. And I would enjoy every moment of it because I would understand what I'm getting out of it. I'd see life from a different point of view. And I've got to tell you, often a better point of view than the one we have at the moment. But we could fix that up. We could fix that up. We have that potential. And that's the story in this one, ladies and gentlemen. It's up to each person to sign up and say, I want to be part of a future that is full of positivity, full of no fear, and full of hope. That's the road I want to walk on. And the Hopi, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you now, they are the keepers of the prophecy. When we do our presentation, we're going to base our presentation around 2 prophecies by the Hopi. They were the ones who kept that, and they did that to give us hope. And what I'm saying to people, if you want hope, go and listen to the Hopi prophecies. They'll give it to you, and we need it right now. In the future, it'll be people like those elders who will be our future. They'll be our leaders in the future, and we won't have the appalling collection we have today. We might even have a tree and a porpoise making the choice with us, and wouldn't that be fantastic?
Oh yeah, I'm just loving all these comments here in the chat rooms coming across. A rocker says, "My heaven has whiskey, yay!" And then John Johnson says, mine has fat joints. Nick Daly, smoking bowls on the beach and fishing.
I remember this. I did tell you a story once about Kano talking to a red kangaroo, telling us what we did 3,000 k's away 4 hours after it happened. Wouldn't it be great to be in conversation with the animals? Because we did have the potential in the past to communicate with them telepathically, and we can still do it. What sort of world would that be? Think about this. This world has more animals than any other animal planet in the cosmos. Think of all the different stories we could hear from all these different beings. We have the potential. This place was created to be heaven on earth, and it still can be. It's up to us.
Absolutely. Stone, do you want to say anything? You've been awful quiet.
Oh, I'm just honestly loving it. It's lovely to chat with you. You know, I've had I lived in Western Australia, Pilbara region, a place called Mulliala, just 25 k's east of Marble Bar. And I had a dark start to my life. And one day in one of my journeys running across Snake Valley, and later on I discovered why it was called Snake Valley, I was picked up by a young gent who was on walkabout, you know, a young Aboriginal on walkabout. And I got to stay with his family for 2 weeks. And the tribe, it was home. It was me. It was an experience of my lifetime that I will never ever forget, and it put me in touch with the rest of some of these shattered areas. And so, you know, I've been dying to talk to you for ages. But I love what you say. I'm now living in the middle of nowhere, rural, and I talk to the magpies. I'm in New Zealand. I was born in New Zealand, but I lived in Australia and got roots all over the place. But my roots are wherever I go. And so the birds talk to me, and I hear them talking like we communicate with, you know, humans. I find myself making the same chirpy sounds and testing them and pushing them to the limits. You know, just recently we fixed up an outside road mirror. You know, as you go around those sharp corners in the rural, you have a mirror that will let people know if there's other traffic coming. And in this, we had to put up another log on that because the magpies like to come and sit on it and look at themselves and hold conversations. So, and then, you know, you're talking about different types of animals. I mean, we put down sheep. We put sheep down in massive ways. But when you live on a farm and you watch what the sheep do and you watch how they communicate with each other, you'll second question yourself, because they're very wise. You know, they are wise. And so, you know, you've got it. Some of these lessons that I learned living with this Aboriginal tribe was, you know, my other family was absolutely fantastic, from eating and gathering ant sugar to cooking snake to, you know, the women doing the women chores while the men did the men chores, and safety in, oh mate, there's so many areas. It was absolutely a spiritual gift journey that I was given in this 3D form and reality. So, you know, I love what you're saying. I totally agree with you. You know, we've got to say, you know, I've also got a Viking background. And so when you were talking about the circles of banishment, the circles of confrontation, you know, you got to go there. I also have home gang, which is they would tie the perpetrator's hand to that was, you know, making allegations. And whoever won the tug of war or the fight between each other, that was the one who was telling the truth. And that would be the end of it. And if anything else was to be taken offshore elsewhere, you know, I'm raised in a Māori family as well, where we would turn our backs and we would shun those who did, you know, perpetrated against us. Now, the background that I came from, they were all a bunch of perpetrators. And I broke the chain and I walked away. And this is what we're doing now. We're coming into our power. We're saying no more. There's so much more to us. I mean, everybody's looking for outside saviors. They're looking to go outside and investigate and take it off planet and build, but we don't need to. This planet here, this mother, this is who we are in contact with. We are part of. always communicating. And once we pick up on those frequencies, there's no going back. And I love what you were saying. So thank you again. You're a great inspiration, and you gave me good confirmation. So thank you, and I look forward to chatting with you sometime in the future.
Definitely, I'd like to. Yeah, you're right, because you were lucky. You were actually, when you did that time living with that family, you experienced what the future should be like.
Oh,
and if every family was like that, it would be different. I mean, the shunning then works. That's the
yes.
point. The shunning works, and to get that love back, you've lost the love of the family. That's becomes deadly. So that's really what this is all about.
When they showed it to me in the tribe, they showed me that you made a mistake, and mistakes are just areas where you need to sit down and have a little bit more teaching from your guides. And we don't have that anymore. And that is sad, because nobody wants to listen to you're not being told off, you're being guided, you're being corrected. You're going to do it your own way anyway. But at the same time, you're given the tools. You're given the tools. When you are aware of that, then you accept them. So there was so much that was given to me then, and I'll never forget it. It's part of my life. So I practice it every day.
So it's a good part of your life for sure, definitely.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. I think we finished that one up now. Is that how we?
Yeah, I think we're done up over here at Humanity Unplugged for day 3. I'm just shooting a quick short here with you guys to share with the world. So maybe, Rob, you want to jump onto the screen, brother, and entertain us for 30 seconds?
Coming on in. Boom.
Rob Yachts from Full Spectrum Universe, and Stone Hobbit, and Stephen and Evan Strong from our alien ancestry at Humanity Unplugged day 3. Join us tomorrow for day 4, guys.
See ya. So that's it.
All right. Fantastic, guys. This was amazing. Thank you very much. I totally appreciate it. Today was a epic day, and tomorrow is going to be that as well, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that.
We haven't ended broadcast yet. We got to end the broadcast. Hold on.
No, hang on. I just want to quickly show people what we got going on tomorrow. And guys, head on over to the channels that you're at and set the reminders for tomorrow's stream. We begin at 8 o'clock a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I know for our friends on Forgotten Origins, that is a bit late at night, but by the time you guys get up, we'll be in full swing. And you can always watch the replays.
Or full spectrum. We'll be in full spectrum, you mean?
That's
full
right.
spectrum mode at that point.
Full spectrum, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for that catch, bro. Let's
plug.
down here. We are on day 4 tomorrow, March the 15th. It's going to be an epic day tomorrow. We are going to start off with Kiara Windrider, and then we've got Crystal Skull in the house, so you guys don't want to miss out on that. I'm totally looking forward to this. And then we have Andy Goldman and Jonathan Goldman. They're going to be talking sound for personal and planetary healing. And then we have Jay Wiedner. He's going to be doing a reality check, transhumanism versus the natural world. And then our good buddy, Agi Nost, he's going to be talking about Gaia's evolutionary call, Can You Hear It? And then Jennifer Koofman, Miriam Schiff, and Isabella Hunt are going to have a panel breaking through the indoctrination of separation, the heart of the matter. And then we have Sharon Rose, Sacred Mysteries, Awakening the Divine Feminine. And then, of course, we're going to be doing our stretches with Leanne and myself. And then after that, we have Arcturus Raw. He's going to be talking about Earth's place in galactic history and ET races. And then Tamara Oviet, Sacred Activations, Disconnect from Global Consciousness and Live Healing. And then we are going to cap the evening off with Nicole, Angela, Melissa, and one other I can't call off the top of my head, but it's a walk-in panel. The Embodied Sisterhood Collective, 5 walk-in souls reflect on their weekly process of channeling, healing, and support. So it's going to be very interesting tomorrow, and very, very much looking forward to this day. I can't wait to see the crystal skull, guys. That's going to be
I know.
totally amazing. It's going to like really set the tempo. A lot of energy is going to come through there. So totally looking forward to tomorrow. So with that being said, guys, thank you very much to everyone who has given donations through PayPal, super stickers, and super chats, and all of that, all the comments. Thank you for the shares and the likes. My name is Omar. I'm a host here at Watchers Talk, coming at you guys from British Columbia, Canada. Rob, any final words?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so amped up to see that skull tomorrow. I have this internal feeling that something is going to happen for me, and I can sense it already. So I'm really excited about that. The whole day, I mean, every day is just stacked. But from all of us here at Full Spectrum Universe, please, hopefully, think about contributing so we can do a better job of bringing in the paid speakers. Some people like to have money when they come in. Of course, we try and get the ones that don't because we don't have a ton of revenue coming in just yet. So if if even a couple dollars, if you could donate via PayPal or become a member of a channel, it definitely helps. And help support us so we can bring you better content.
Stone, any final words?
Just definitely come back. This is an awakening event. We are stepping into ourselves. We're getting clarity. We're getting confirmation. This is a boost. This is an upcharge. So we're already doing the work. Absolutely fantastic. Yes, I will be here tomorrow as well. So I look forward to taking it to the next step. I can't wait for the crystal skulls. You know how I am. You know what it means. So let's beam it up. Let's beam up this frequency, people. Thank you, everybody.
Evan, I haven't heard your divine vocals, brother. Any final thoughts?
I see the beautiful hair, but we haven't heard your voice yet.
Yeah, definitely gotta hear some final words from.
Did you see the way it just bounced a little? It was perfect. So freaking jealous.
Oh no.
Evan, give us some final words, brother.
Yeah, well, what an amazing few days, and we're not even halfway through.
What an ambitious journey.
Yeah. Respect.
Definitely.
But so many good things yet to come. So it's really exciting. Yeah, we're just glad to be part of this and to be surrounded by so many good people.
Yeah, and it's a positive sense.
And it's what really we need right now, really.
Heaps of it. Well done. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. And we will see you guys tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful night. Have a great night. Be safe. Be well. Stay healthy. Good night for now.
Good night.